Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Tyrant Season 1, Episode 4, Sins of the Father. And this episode was amazing. I absolutely love this episode. I thought this was a great episode. I think the show's only going to get better from here. I said this before, but I feel like the show's only going to get better from here. I'm really enjoying this show. It's getting really, really good. And I'm really looking forward to, the next episode after this. So, was this episode better than this week's episode of Finding Carter? I can't really compare the two because I love both of these shows. But I'll say yes, it probably was. But I still, really love Finding Carter. But I still thought this was better, in my opinion. So let's just get to it. So Barry is out for his morning run, followed by security, and he thinks about college in America. He heads into a door, and basically, we kind of see a flashback to when he went to college, and I thought this was interesting. He heads into the dorm room, and song Everybody Wants to Rule the World is playing. He sees his walls have been tagged with hateful things about his father, rips down the newspapers that reports his father's atrocities. On the run, he stops to catch his breath. He's security, SUV waits at a distance. And I enjoyed that scene overall because it kind of showed us what his life was like in college. So Kasim washes his hands and feet and then rolls out his prayers met. He whispers his prayers, then Akbar, I don't know how you can pronounce it. He then prostrates himself, does it again and again. His wife watches from the doorway and then leaves him to it. Jamal lies in bed and Lila tells him it might work. He tells her not to talk about it. They're talking about his dick, obviously. She says the doctor said it might and tells him that they could try because she wants to have sex with him, obviously, but he doesn't know if he should, because he doesn't know if it's going to hurt or not. And Jamal says if they try and he fails, he'll feel worse. And he tells her to change the subject and... yeah, so Molly is then up getting dressed, and Barry comes in. He tells her he couldn't sleep and says it's the 23rd. He says it's an anniversary he'd like to forget. She hugs him and he goes to take a shower. I'm guessing it's his anniversary of going to college. Nimat tells Kassam she saw him praying and he asks if it's a problem. And Salim tells his mom he's tired of just bread and she says that it's all they have. Kasim leaves the table and says he's going to see a man. She asks if it's about a job and he says yes. He tells Salam and his Nazarene. I don't know how to pronounce these names. Oh my god. Why does the show have to have the hardest names to pronounce? That soon they will have more than bread for breakfast and will have all the fruit, eggs, and cheese he can eat. He tries to kiss Nimot, but she tells him to return to work if he wants a kiss. And I thought, that was a nice scene. Molly and Barry then sit at breakfast and the kids come in. She tells them that Barry wants Uncle Jamal to acknowledge the gas attacks in Mon. And Emma says it's the least he can do and reminds them that 20,000 people were killed. Sammy says they were trying to kill them, but Emma isn't having it. Sammy asks Emma what her problem is with them being royalty, and Barry corrects him and says it's not a monarchy. Emma basically says that they are just the grandchildren of a war criminal. Molly scolds her, and Emma asks Rima, the servant, if people still talk about what happened in Mon, and she says not really, but is nervous, and Molly tells them not to put her on the spot. She tells Rima she's sorry, and the woman leaves. I love this scene because, as I said, I've really wanted to see Molly and the kids play a bigger role in the show, and this episode, they played quite a big role in the show, and I really enjoyed that. So two workers are putting up a giant play card of Jamal over top of the one of his father. Kasim comes into the square before the display and shouts out, "Never forgot Mon." He says he never forgets the criminals, the crimes against humanity, and says like his father, like son, spreads out a flag and says down with the tyrants, douses the flag with gas while he shouts, then puts the flag around him and kneels, and he lays it across him like a shroud, pulls out a lighter, immolates himself while a crowd watches, so I was like, what the fuck is he doing? The worker shoots a video of it on his phone, and the other worker tells him not to do it, and he says he will lose his job and tells him to do his work. The young man is horrified, but goes back to work as Kasim burns himself while others stand around watching, and that was just like, holy shit. I was like so surprised that he did that. Now later, people are laying candles around the site where Kasim killed himself, and Ayub tells Nimat that Kasim was a great hero of the residents, and promises him a great martyr's funeral. She says to just leave her house, and one of the sons tells Ayub that he wants to be a hero like his father, and Ayub says he didn't know Kasim well, but says he knew he worked hard to take care of them until the Afayeds replaced him with one of their cronies. and he tells her that their time is coming to an end. Her husband's courage will be remembered as the first great act of the defiance of their liberation. So he wishes her peace, and he and his men leave. And Nimat cries and holds her son, and someone is listening to her home, and they play the sound footage for the council the next day. Jamal says Ayab was behind all this, and Tariq reminds them that he had him in custody. And Tariq says Ayab is an enemy of the state, and they need to clear the square. So Barry says it's a peaceful protest, and is a basic human right. He tells them if they haul them off, it will look horrible on YouTube, because they are recording it on YouTube. And Barry says Jamal should go to the square and express regret for what happened in Mon. And Barry says Ayab is trying to claim the moral high ground by tying Jamal to their father's crime and gassing these people. And Tariq doesn't see it as a crime, though. He says he was happy to carry out the order. And Barry tells Jamal not to let him, and says he needs to show the people that he will rule differently and respect their rights. And Jamal agrees with Barry and tells Tariq that he is the true voice of abundance, not the terrorist, and says the people will be thrilled at his words. They all stand as Jamal leaves, and Tariq glares at Barry. So Sammy calls Abdul and gets his voicemail, and he asks him why he's not calling him back, then hangs up as his cousin comes in. Ahmed has his trainer, Anna, an East German. She was a deck athlete at the '88 Olympics, and he tells him Nusrat has been under the weather, and he wants to take her to the club tonight. He says he and Emma have to come, and he says the Nassar twins are coming and are hot. And I love this. I love that they're finally getting Sammy and Emma actually involved in the show. They're giving them stuff to do, and this was great, because Sammy and Emma, to this point, haven't done anything. So he tells him he and Abdul can have each one of the girls. He agrees when he hears that Abdul is coming. Ahmed tells him that Abdul goes where he goes, and at the square, there are more protesters than before. Fawzi finds Samira. They're handling out flyers and asks where she's been. She says, where I belong. He tells her that it's not safe and she should be home with him. Samira says she's done waiting on freedom and will make it happen. He reminds her that she was already arrested. She says the reason she hasn't been arrested is because he is no threat. He tells her to come home with him, but some other protesters tell him to leave her alone and says she's doing the righteous thing. She tells him she knows that it is imperfect, but says she wants to give him a chance and asks him to stay with her. So Rima watches the protest on the news while she cleans, and there's a newsman saying that Jamal is the son of a butcher of Abundant. She clicks it off, but Molly comes in and begs her forgiveness, and she says it's against the law and can only watch what is allowed, and Molly asks if she can be arrested for watching the news. She then asks Rima if people don't talk about Mon because she's scared, and the woman begs her not to say any more, and she leaves. And in the car with Lila, Jamal rehearses his speech, and Barry is there as well. Lila asks why he would apologize for something his father did when he was just a child, and Barry tells Lila that they follow Ayab because he's given them a voice. Ayab is then making a speech at the square and said that the security forces are making it safe for Jamal to come among them like a pharaoh. And he tells him he's standing there as a man, a servant of Allah, and not someone who inherited the country on their birth. He asks the crowd who lost 20 years ago in Mon, and many hands go up, and he says he too lost someone who was his mother. And he says he saw blood come out her mouth and eyes, and then his father was exiled with scared lungs, his only reminder of home. And that is really sad, honestly. I felt really bad for him. And then Ayab says the Al-Fayeds offers platitudes instead of work and food. He says the people of Abundant have asked for little, and that's what they've gone back from them. He says they are there to tell the Al-Fayeds that their day is done, and the crowd repeats this as a chant and burns an effigy. As Jamal pulls up in his car, the crowd attacks the car and beats at the windows. Jamal tells his driver to drive on. He tears up his speech, says tomorrow there will be only be pigeons in the square. And yeah, so then at the club, Ahmed and the others party hard. They head up into the VIP area, and he introduces Emma and Sammy to the twins, Nashina and Sabrina. And Nusra is there too, having fun, and Allison, a waitress, comes up, and Ahmed says she's his favorite. She's a cute, blonde American, and kisses his cheek, and hands him a bottle of champagne that he guzzles from. And Sammy tells Abdul he's been leaving him messages, and he tells Sammy he needs to stop doing that. He asks if he's just going to blow him, then blow him off. And Abdul says it was just a hookup, but Sammy says it was more. Abdul walks off and hugs Ahmed. He pours champagne for all of them, and Sammy watches annoyed. And Jamal is watching porn and trying to get hard when he's interrupted by Lila. I mean, that was kind of funny. She tells him John Tucker's on the way over, and he asks why. She says she asked him to because he will need the Americans after he cleans the square. He asks why, and she says for political cover from the UN and the EU and the human rights watchdogs. He asks if the Americans will stand with him, and she says if they want to keep their base in their country, they will. Now, Jamal says clearing the square sounds antiseptic, but people will die. She says those who don't will understand that he's strong and carry that lesson home with them. She tells him to suit up. And Barry then calls Fozzie and says he needs to talk to him. He says they would need to talk in person, but not at the square. They agree to meet at a cafe near the plaza in an hour, and Fozzie watches the demonstrators party and dance. Then we cut back to the club, where the rich and privileged dance and party. The two are stark contrast in descendants versus poverty. And Nashina dances with Sammy and says he's a good dancer now he has a girlfriend. And he says no, and he stares at Abdul. And Ahmed tells Emma about his sports cars, and he asks why he needs two. And he says because he can. And Nusrat tells him not to be rude to Emma. And she tells him that there are hungry people in his country, and he asks why he should care about them. So she says a man who was unemployed for a year lit himself on fire and says that Ahmed shouldn't be laughing about it, and Ahmed tells her she's not fun and says he wants to dance, and he asks Nusrat to dance. And I understand her logic here. Don't laugh about someone who set themselves on fire. I mean, that's just wrong. So Abdul watches Sammy, and Ahmed asks what he's looking at. He says nothing, and Ahmed orders, basically orders him to get another bottle. Abdul suggests that he take a break from the booze, but he orders him to go, so Abdul does. So Jamal's in a suit and ready to chat when John Tucker comes in. He thanks him for coming at such a late hour, and John says he heard about his aborted trip to the plaza. Jamal says that he's sending in a force to clear the plaza at dawn. He expects the U.S. to issue a statement condemning the excessive force, and John asks how excessive it will be, and Jamal says as much as it needs to be. Now, Jamal says he assures that he'll have no real problem with the U.S. except for their pro forma objection, and Jamal asks how many bodies will cause a problem, and John says the wrong one could cause a problem. And if it was a college co-ed, Jamal threatens the naval base, and they seem to have an accord. And John says the naval base lease is with the nation, not with the Al-Fayeds. So then back at the club, Ahmed tells Sammy that America thinks that everyone has a right to everything, but there's only so much room in the VIP section. Abdul then comes up with a tray, and Ahmed bumps him, and the crystal goes flying. Then Ahmed goes flying into a rage, as Abdul did on purpose because he didn't want him drinking anymore. And he tells Abdul to give him his pants so he doesn't have to walk out looking like he pissed himself. And Sammy defends Abdul, and Abdul says it was his fault, and Ahmed asks where his wife is, and Abdul stomps off annoyed. So he's kind of annoyed about that. So Molly tells Barry she's worried about the kids being out so late, and he says they can't keep them locked in the palace forever. He's putting on his coat, and she asks where he's going. He says Fozzie is blogging from the square, and he's going to meet him. He says he needs to warn the people before. She asks before what, and he says Jamal gave Tyrant permission to send in the stormtroopers in the morning, and Molly tells him it's not safe for him to be down there, and he tells her it's not safe for anyone down there. Molly tells him she's not the enemy when he gets angry, and she tells him she's on his side, and he says she shouldn't be because he has no clue. He tells her he pushed Jamal to release Ayab, and this happened. He says he just didn't want Jamal to be like his dad, but what will happen in the morning, there is his fault. Molly tells him that Rima told her today that they've all been living in fear for 20 years, and the people have had enough. She says she didn't make Ayab what he is. His father did, and if he had left him, he would have been martyred, and he could have been worse by now. I love this scene, by the way, because, as I said, I really wanted Molly to do stuff in the show, and here she's finally doing stuff. So Molly says it took a century to get peace in Northern Ireland, and things are still bad in Kashmir. She says the people here are scared and broken, and you can't fix it over a long weekend. She says getting the two sides to move even an inch closer to each other is a win. He tells her he'll be okay, kisses her, and leaves. So Sammy and Emma come back to the palace, and Sammy gets a text. He tells Emma he's going to head to the kitchen for a snack. She heads upstairs, and he goes to meet Abdul, and Abdul apologizes to him, and Sammy says he doesn't understand. Abdul says his family are nobodies, and Sammy says he doesn't care. Abdul says he gets invited because of the way he looks and dresses, but he's there at their pleasure, and could be gone to snap. He says that's why Ahmed can treat him like he wants. And Abdul says it's also why they can't be together. And he says if Sammy gets caught, he can go home, but Abdul has no place to go. Sammy asks why he didn't just ignore him from the start, and Abdul says he thought he was only visiting, so he took a chance and says he's sorry if he hurt him. So, of course, Sammy actually, likes Abdul and everything, so he wants to be with him and everything, but there's kind of some tension between them, but I like that they did make up in the end. So Barry meets Fozzie at the cafe. Fozzie asks what's so important, why he couldn't tell him on the phone. Barry says Tarek and Zayat are listening to his calls. He tells Fozzie that forces are coming at dawn to clear the plaza. He says he and Samir should be gone. Fozzie says that's what everyone has been expecting since the protest started. And Barry says he's coming to warn him it is a possibility, an act of treason. Says he's its friend and doesn't want him to die. And Fozzie tells him to go to hell. He says that instead of Barry warning him to leave, he should be in the plaza with them. Barry said he tried to come and almost got lynched, and Fozzie says that's because he came in a limo with palace security. And he says he should have walked in as a man and citizen of Abundant. Barry asks, and then what Fozzie, and then what? And Fozzie says that he needs to get his hands dirty and get involved. And basically Barry says he won't support Ayab, and Fozzie says he has no illusions about Ayab. And he says the people are done being told how to lead their lives. And Barry says she's risking her life, and Fozzie tells him whatever happens, he'll be standing next to her. And Barry asks him to wait and he goes to walk away. So Molly comes to see Emma, and he asks how it was at the club, and Emma's not happy, and Molly asks her to tell her what went on. And Emma says she just wants to go home, and Molly tells her it's okay. Emma says it's not. Emma says there are things seriously wrong with this place. She's tired of it, and she just wants to go home. So Emma really wants to go home, so we'll have to see what happens there, if they actually end up leaving or not. We'll have to see. But Jamal talks to Tarek, and he tells her his nephew he'll move at dawn and use tear gas, rubber bullets, and water cannons. And Jamal asks if that's not enough. Tarek says they will use live ammo, and Jamal says it will be a bloodbath, and Tarek says it usually doesn't take that many corpses to discourage idolists. Jamal looks on his tablet at footage of Gaddafi being attacked and ripped apart by his people. Barry shows up, and Jamal says he has to call him back, and Jamal asks him why he sent him the footage. Barry says that's his future if he lets Tarek do what he wants, and Jamal asks if he knows that they sodomized Gaddafi with a bayonet before they shot it, and Barry tells him that Gaddafi was on his way to commit mass slaughter when they got him. And Barry tells him not to use violence because it doesn't work. He says he set up a meeting with Ayab, and Barry says Ayab is willing to meet him, and it may be things they can agree to peacefully rather than killing. Now Jamal sits and looks at his brother. He looks at the frozen footage of Gaddafi on his tablet, and Barry says he can go down in history as another brutal dictator or leader who has the courage to listen to his people, and he asks Jamal who he wants to be, and that's how it ended. And I thought that was an awesome ending, because really, Jamal needs to try to figure out who he wants to be. So now Barry's going to try to help his brother. Does he want to be this mean dictator that everybody hates, or does he want to be, an actual respected dictator that makes good decisions and knows what is right, and people, adore him? What kind of dictator does he want to be? He needs to try to figure that out. So yeah, that happened, and also, what's going to happen with Emma? Do you think Emma is actually going to try to leave? Emma and Molly, Emma wants to leave, and she's kind of sick of it, so she wants to leave. Sammy, what's going to happen with him? I know him and Abdul kind of have their little relationship, Abdul doesn't want a relationship with him, but we'll have to see what happens there. But overall, that storyline was interesting. And also, there's a lot of tension between Barry and Molly right now. So do you think that Molly's actually going to leave? I like that Molly had a lot more to do in this episode, and Emma and Sammy had stuff to do as well. I like that a lot, and I thought this was probably the first perfect episode of the season, definitely. I had no problems with this episode. I thought every side character had something to do in this episode. That was perfect, and I absolutely loved it. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be another classic mirror review. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.